What do you do when it feels like your dream is interrupted? Just thinking about the dreams or calling God has in your life, and sometimes it feels like there's these pretty massive interruptions, and sometimes it can feel hard to find the grit or the tenacity or the resiliency to move forward. And looking at the life of the Apostle Paul, you see his dream was interrupted a lot. Now, I think his dream was a dream that God gave him. It was a calling, and it was to take the gospel beyond, the city of Jerusalem, beyond the Israelites, to a much broader audience, to all nations, to the Greek-speaking world. And on 3 occasions in particular, we know that Paul's dream was really massively interrupted. He shipwrecked. And one of these shipwreck stories is told in the book of Acts. It's in Acts 27, and its author, Luke, who most likely was journeying with Paul as kind of Paul's physician slash biographer. He accounts a story of this massive shipwreck that should have ended in disaster, but we see that the dream God has for Paul's life is much bigger than just Paul's comfort. And Paul boards a ship, first in Jerusalem, going to Caesarea to be put on trial, and then from Caesarea is taken to be on a path to Rome to be put on trial in front of Caesar and the emperor's court. And one of the things that happens is the chief officer over the ship and over Paul is a man named Julius, and he's a centurion, one of the kind of Roman official guards. But more than that, he's what's called the Augustan cohort, which means that he's kind of special ops. Think like massive military experience, probably legendary career, is chosen by Caesar to have this role. And Paul has favor with him. So one of the things that happens as followers of Jesus, that when God puts us in the right situation and asks us to step up as a leader, he gives us favor. And, Luke doesn't account whether Julius had a conversion as a follower of Jesus. It can kind of be assumed, because Julius has these interactions with Paul that no guard over a prisoner would have. He actually gives Paul a voice at one point to make a decision. He also allows Paul to visit some of the friends and churches while he's in Caesarea. And so from Caesarea, they go to the port of Myra to get a much larger boat and take all the prisoners and put them over to a ship that's going to be going to Rome. And the ship would have been a wheat merchant ship. There's 276 souls on board. That's women and children. That's probably people of different ethnicities. There's merchants. There would have been students of the University of Augusta. There would have been all sorts of just kind of different backgrounds, thinkers, and people on this ship in particular. This isn't a small ship. It probably weighed about 500 tons once it was filled with wheat. The wheat would have been coming from Egypt to Italy. And so they begin this journey, and over the course of the next couple of days, the winds turn on them, and they really kind of have to pause for a second and say, like, what are we going to do? And Paul actually gets the opportunity to share his voice and say, I think we should just sit here for the winter and kind of wait this out. Now, there's not even a port where they're kind of like hidden in this besides these cliffs, and Paul says, like, we should just sit here. So they'd have to stay on the boat for all of winter. And Julius ends up saying, like, no, we got to risk it. We got to go for it. Let's just we're gonna shoot across kind of along the coast, and we're gonna try and make it. Now, it's probably late September, early October, and one of the things in early nautical ship captaining is that you wouldn't take a boat out past October. You definitely wouldn't in November, because this is pre-compass. So if you can't see the stars, if you can't see the horizon, you have no navigational system. You're running totally blind. And so they take a pretty massive risk, and they decide to cut along the coast and to head towards Rome. And during that time, a storm picks up. Luke actually uses the language of typhonic. It's a typhoon. It's massive waves. And they spend days and days just kind of traversing these waves. They have to shed a bunch of the cargo. They end up taking these massive kind of coils, these ropes, and then tying together the whole to make sure the boat can stay afloat. And over this course of time, they're just a cork in the ocean, just bobbing up and down, back and forth. And at one point, Paul has a dream, and in that dream, he hears from God, from an angel of the Lord, that they're going to survive, but not without shipwreck. And I just think that's interesting because my personal comfort level wants to survive and not get shipwrecked. A lot of the time my prayers reflect that, like, God save us and, the ship. And God has a bigger plan. And because of that, Paul actually has an opportunity to proclaim the good news of the gospel to all these 276 people and says, you're not going to die, but we're going to have to stay united together. We can't leave the ship. And so at one point, there's actually some of the guards end up trying to grab there's a single lifeboat. They try to grab the lifeboat and steal and just and ditch and they get caught. And Paul says, we have to stay together. And I wonder, even if this season of challenge that can feel like maybe a pause in your dreams or a shipwreck, if one of the things God's teaching us is to stay united, and this opportunity that we have as followers of Jesus to God's giving us favor to be a voice that this doesn't end in disaster, that God is faithful to his people, that God will protect us, and that he will continue to have hope for humanity. And so one of the things that happens is Julius tells the crew to lay 4 anchors. And because the lifeboat would be drag weight to cut the lifeboat. And I wonder what anchors you have in your life right now. I know there's 4 that are pretty important for me, and I think it's for us as followers of Jesus. The first is to stay encouraged. It's an anchor. It's easy to get discouraged. It'd be easy for Paul to be discouraged. I mean, you've been in prison, you're getting shipwrecked. It'd be easy for him not even to speak up and just to continue to say, okay, maybe this is it. It's the end of it seems like it's the end of my career. It's the end of my life. I'm an old man. But he stays encouraged. He actually says, we're going to survive, but we're going to have to actually unite. And one of the things he does is he's so practical. He says, we're going to have to eat a meal. It's after 14 days of them in a storm having eaten nothing. 276 people probably on top of each other. He says, we've got to eat a meal. They actually pause and eat a meal together because Paul's so practical. He's like, how are we going to survive a shipwreck if we are starving? Stay encouraged. How can you daily just stay encouraged in who Christ is in you? I think the second anchor is compassion. We are people of the good news of the gospel. How can you have an anchor of just saying, okay, what compassion can I unleash today, this week? I think the third anchor we have is a hope. Actually, the writer of Hebrews actually says that is our anchor, is hope, in that this all is going somewhere and it's not disaster, that God has a plan for all of humanity, that there'll be a new heaven and a new earth, and that what we invest in now will make a difference. And then the fourth is just prayer. What is it that you can anchor your prayer life in so you can say every day, Jesus, I need to bring this to you, and this is the stuff inside me that's ugly. These are the things around me that I'm worried about. But even more than that, just let me listen to your voice. Let me have your heart. And so they drop 4 anchors. They ditch the lifeboat, and for a while they're just tossing and turning on the side of these kind of rocks and hoping for the best. And we see that they make it to shore, all 276 people. And I wonder, looking back, if Paul would actually say that part of the dream, the calling on his life, were those shipwreck moments, and that the early church in Rome was the reason the church made it to the entire world, as the catalyst. And for Paul to get to Rome was a pretty big deal. But I think even more than that, Paul would look back over his life and say those 276 people, that there was something there. And I wonder, looking back on this season, what we'll say, that was it right there. That was the dream. Can I pray for you? Jesus, give us your spirit. Give us your eyes. We thank you. We love you. In your name, amen.